Welcome back to the TWTL podcast. I'm Chris Ferris, and this is our ongoing coverage of Because of the Times 2019. We're just finishing up our Night 3 recap for Because of the Times, the closeout service. I can let you know right off the bat, we're going to try and come back and do a full recap podcast sometime next week, to go over what we got out of the conference, give some personal thoughts and everything. But for these recaps, we've wanted to pretty much just share what's been spoken from the pulpit and what's been experienced in the audience, so as to get you, our audience, as close to the conference as possible. So today it's just going to be, just as all the others, just a regular recap, but next week we'll have some more personal thoughts and ideas on the conference as a whole, so look forward to that. Now, as far as last night, it was a powerful service, great worship, great moves of God, great prayer throughout. Just like always, throughout this entire conference, we've seen some amazing moves of God, from praise and worship and just people excited about connecting with Jesus Christ on a deep level, to depths of travail over the convicting messages that have gone forth and the convicting Word of God. In fact, last night a couple of tongues and interpretation were given along the lines of calling people to a deeper calling in God and calling people to a greater service in God. One thing that was mentioned and in the lead up to Reverend Mike Williams was that we're called to be sheep among wolves. We're not supposed to tiptoe, and it's not supposed to be just an easy stroll through this life when we serve God. We've got to get in the fight, and though we're supposed to be sheep among wolves, we're supposed to take the battle to the enemy. We're not supposed to sit back and just take everything that the devil throws at us. We're supposed to come at him with every spiritual weapon that we have, but we're supposed to go into the places where people are in danger spiritually. We're supposed to go into places where people are under attack spiritually. That's where the harvest is going to be found, is going into places where nobody else will go and doing things that nobody else will do. And a lot of us have been called to do things, and it's time to get off of our comfort level and get into the fight and get into the fray. So that was an amazing beginning to the service. And then Reverend Mark Morgan came up and he solidified that thought and was calling people to a greater purpose in God, calling people to take a seat at the table that's prepared amongst your enemies. He gave a vision about how he saw the enemy sitting across the table on a battlefield, and there were seats across to that table that were empty, and he told people in that audience, and I think that's true for anybody that listens to this podcast or anybody that wants to serve God, is that there are open seats ready to be taken in which you will be put into direct opposition with the enemy. And the question is, are you going to fill that seat? Are you going to fill the seat of your community? Are you going to fill the seat of the souls that surround you? Are you going to fill the seat of the place that nobody wants to go in your community? Are you going to fill the seat of the difficult paths and the difficult opportunities that lay before us to win souls, to disciple souls, to bring souls to Christ, and to overcome the enemy that's trying to take over our communities, take over our cities, take over our families and our churches? Are you willing to take a seat? Because God's got the seat ready for you. And I know we're going to do a whole recap of the whole conference, but that's one thing that I found was it was a big challenge week, is who's going to step up, who's going to take their place where God has prepared for them. God has plans and preparations for us, but we just have to step into those things. And that was solidified tonight. And then Reverend Mike Williams, of course, there was prayer and everything, and everything that Reverend Morgan said was further confirmed through another tongues and interpretation. In fact, I think one of the things that was said was that God said He had called people. I think He said specifically 4 times, and this is the time where you've got to choose to step into it. And I don't know what that means for anybody. Maybe you're listening here and you felt like consistently called by God, and God's giving you another chance. He's not quitting on you. He's waiting on you. And it's time to step in and take the role that God has prepared for you. And then Reverend Mike Williams came on and gave an awesome speech about how God marvels at His creation. The one creation that God marvels at is us. You know, He created the entire universe and the planets and the solar system and all the stars in the sky and every living creature on this planet, and yet the only thing that makes Him marvel is us. And He used the scripture when the centurion came and Jesus, he requested that Jesus heal his servant, and Jesus said, well, let's go to your servant. And then the centurion said, well, hold on, I know that all you have to do is speak the word, because I can speak the word and somebody will go and do something for me. So, if you are who I think you are, you can just speak the word and it be done. Basically, it was a way of acknowledging that, hey, Jesus, if I can do this, then Jesus can do far and greater above. And so that really stuck out to me in this message is that what makes God marvel at us is, yes, it's the request. It's saying, God, I need this from you, and it's asking those things that are above and beyond. And He gave great examples like Joshua asking for the sun to stand still. And He gave examples throughout the Bible of others who asked above and beyond what man can do because they needed to rely on God for the greater things. And we have to ask things that are above and beyond ourselves. We have to trust that God can do the above and beyond in our lives. And when we do that, God marvels at our faith because we're recognizing just how powerful God is. But I think the thing that really makes God marvel, and what kind of popped out in his dissertation in this sermon, is the man acknowledged that God had the ability to do things that were above and beyond himself. And he compared Him to His own role and His ability to give orders and speak things into existence. And He couldn't speak His servant's healing into existence, but He knew that God could. And so I think what came out of this sermon most for me is that what makes God marvel is that we acknowledge exactly who God is. Not that we just request amazing and powerful things, but it's the acknowledgement and recognition of God and all of His authority and all of His abilities and all of His wonder, and that He would do it. Acknowledging that God is willing to do those great things for us, that He wants to help us, that He wants to provide for us, that He wants to empower us, and that He wants to see us fulfilled in this life. And so throughout this message, it's just that idea that we make God marvel, that all of the earth is His footstool. Nothing makes God marvel like when man acknowledges God for who He is. And the reason is that because there's so many people who choose to not acknowledge God. When you look at it throughout history, man has rejected God and ignored God and gone other ways. There's been far more people in this life that have chosen to reject God and ignore God than to acknowledge and recognize God for who He is. And so when we do it, it makes God marvel because there's a choice there. No other creation has a choice like we have the choice to acknowledge God. He put that in us. And even though He put that ability in us, it still makes God marvel when we choose the right path. It doesn't mean that God's cynical about humanity or anything like that. It's just He loves to see His people choose the right choice. He loves to see the one creation that has the ability to choose whether to serve God or not, to make the right decision. God is excited and in awe of when we choose Him above everything else that we could choose. And the Bible's obviously full of examples of what God does for those who did it. Because He did make the sun stand still for Joshua. He did provide the promise for Abraham when he chose to follow after him. He did give David a lineage of kings because he had a heart for God. He put Ruth in the lineage of not only David, but also Jesus when she was a Moabitess, because she chose to take on God as her God. And the disciples and Mary choosing to actually take on the virgin conception when she knew there were challenges facing her, because she acknowledged who God was and what God's plan was for her. And the disciples choosing to believe in Jesus Christ and choosing to spread the gospel in the face of the wolves that were waiting for them. That makes God marvel. And we can make God marvel today. And God has some kind of promise and some kind of blessing and some kind of plan for you that He's just waiting to unleash. All you have to do is one thing, and that's choose to acknowledge and recognize Him for who He is. Once you've done that, whatever you ask in His name, He'll gladly give it to you. So that was what came from me for Reverend Mike Williams tonight. It was an amazing service. Mighty move of God. The power of God was on display throughout the service. It's been on display this whole week. I can't wait to give you a final recap of the whole thing and give you my personal thoughts. We'll do that next week. But I hope you've enjoyed these daily and, twice daily recaps so far. And we'll have more stuff for you through TWTL Ministries. We're going to be doing some Bible study stuff. We're going to be doing some other stuff in the near future, so you look forward to that. We'll try and have an announcement about that next week. But until then, thank you so much for being with us. We'll see you next time. God bless and keep searching.